mga kababayan ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas. Kayang magiging kasasilakanan, alam ng puso, sa likod ko'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, ulit na ng pag-ibig, sa mandudupin, ikaw pasisigil, sa nagagang tulong sa simula, sa langit ko wagaw, ay nilatang tulakaw, sa pagkalang nilalaan, at sa lang matawag ko'y nabuhay na nag-iigil, ang ituloy na tarong niya, kay lang ay nag-iigil, pagsinta, buhay na hangin sa amin mo. Ang ligaya na pagpay ng amin, ang matay ng dahil sa'yo. Simula noon hanggang ngayon, isang naging layo, magkaisaan magmundo, nagtitingnan ay marunong. Tayo mula sa hamon ng bata, niyamos ang mga inarumalang. Pinangako sa puso ang paniniwala, ang himawang para sa harapan. Ang sanmano ay namuntay, mula na bawis sumo at buhay. Kapayapaan, katarungan, ay ang pinanglakamtan. Alam tulira, at pala'y magsamoro. Magsamoro, na ikaw mamahalin. Walang pipigil sa damdamin, mga pangako'y tutuparin. Habang buhay kami sa'yo'y magpapatay, mananatili sa puso't isipan. Ang lahat tumutin ay nagbuwis ng buhay, nasa pilaran may kapal. Ang sanmano ay namuntay, mula ng bawis sumo at buhay. Kapayapaan, katarungan, ay ang pinanglakamtan. Alam tulira, at pala'y magsamoro. Ang gobyerno registration bilang Manila ay nagkakilala ay tumatalay sa naisipang kasalukuyan at napapanahon. Mapapalikan, mapatingnan at voluntaryo at balita ang programa ito'y patas sa lahat. Walang kinikilingan, walang kinakampihan at walang pinapanigan ang programa ito. Ang programa ito ay public service sa kahanginan at trabaho lamang.
Female voice, male voice, lolly voice, monster voice.
Okay, pabuenas sa araw naman ng Lunes ngayon. Okay, pabuenas sa hanap buhay. Okay, 45 minutos ang time check natin. Pasado po alas 6 mga tagapakinig na. Okay. Ang araw na ito, 5 po ng Pebrero, no? Okay, araw ng Lunes. Okay, 2024. Okay, yan po ang time check natin, no? Sa programa natin, okay, sa platform ng ADLSNTV News Online Channel, no? Okay. Magandang umaga. Good morning. Okay. Sa universal greeting natin, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh sa lahat mga kababayan, no? Ayan. So, kumusta kayo? Okay. Kumusta kayong mga sambayan ng Pilipino, no? Okay, sabi ng Pangulo natin ay maibsan daw ang kahirapan mga suki, mga kababayan. Okay, sa bagong Pilipino, no? And then may mga programa daw sa na iba sa agriculture. Okay, sa agriculture sector. Tingnan nga natin ito, no? Okay, baka bola naman itong mga public pronouncement. Okay, sa ating lahat mga kababayan, no? Okay, papasok ang programa Halo-Halo Special, Opinion, Balita at iba pa. Kasama po ang serbisyo publiko, tinig ng mamamayan. And then, sumbungan ng mamamayan, no? Okay, marami naman na umaligid-aligid. Okay, mga politiko, lalo na po sa amin sa Basilan. Okay, marami naman na nabuhayan po kasi malapit naman politik, no? Okay, 2015. Okay, marami naman na magpasyo. Okay, magpaikot-ikot. Okay, para maalala po pagdating ng halalan, no? Okay. Ayan. So, sino-sino kaya ang mga kandidato sa Basilan po sa 2025? Okay, sino kaya ang alam ko ay si Joy Akbar. Saan ka ng mga Akbar ay tatakbo daw siya ng congressman sa Lone District ng Basilan, no? Okay, ditong si Ahmad Salaw. Okay, tatakbo daw ng governor po sa Basilan mga kabayan, no? Okay, sige lang. Okay, sa ngalan ng demokrasya, wala pong pwede pumigil po sa mga may ambisyon po magpolitik mga kababayan, no? Nakita ko naman sa picture po, yung tinatawag di legend, okay, ng Basilan, itong si Jerry Salapudin, no? Ano man kaya balakin niya? Okay, malalaman din natin yan kasi mga politiko pag season ng politik kay nabubuhay po ang dugo nila, no? Ang mga ugat nila. Okay, kahit paugod-ugod na, okay, nabubuhay yan mga suki pag-araw ng pag-season ng politics, no? Ako nga nagsabi ako noon ay gusto ko pero okay sa kalagayan ko, okay, halos hindi na makalakad. Okay, mabuti pa may magpahinga na lang mga suki, no? Okay, halos hindi na makalakad. Ayan. Okay, sa karamdaman mga suki, mga tagapakinig, no? Mabuti pa aminin na natin, no? Okay, kasi mapahiya ka. Pagdating sa 2025, hindi ka makakampanya. Dahil masakit ng mga buto-buto mo. Okay, masakit ng mga tuhod mo, mga kababayan, no? Mabuti pa manatili na lang ko dito sa aking microphone. Okay, makapagserbisyo po ako ng mabuti. Okay, sa kapwa natin, no? Okay, buenos dias con todos, mga bisinos, akin na Zamboanga, no? Okay, 98, okay, barangay akin na Ciudad de Zamboanga, mga kababayan, no? Kumusta, kumusta? Okay, buenos dias. Problema natin sa mga subdivision ay tubig, no? Okay, mabuti lumabas ang tubig, no? Kahapon naghakot kami ng tubig, okay, sa kabilang bahay namin doon din sa, okay, sa Roseville subdivision, no? Mabuti may pumping station kami roon, no? Yung mano-mano, okay, pagkuha ng tubig, no? Yung balon, ayan po mga suki, no? So, no hay agua, okay, no hay agua. Limited ang tulo po, okay, ng agua, no? Zamboanga Water District, okay, Zamboanga City Water District. Hindi natin naman masyado ma-blame kasi itong tag-init, itong El Niña mga kababayan, no? So, wag natin masyado sisihin po. Okay, natural problema, okay, natural calamities mga kababayan, no? Yung pagkawala ng tubig natin. Pero, may suggest natin po sa Zamboanga City Water District, okay, kailangan maghanap talaga ng source ng tubig, no? Kahit pa malayo sa atin. Kailangan po mag-invest ang Zamboanga City para hindi tayo magkaroon ng shortage sa tubig, no? Iyan ang hanapin nila, yung mga planner ng Zamboanga City, yung mga urban planner, okay, saan maghanap po ng source ng tubig, no? Ayan. Ganito. Sa bandang huli, magdilaan na lang tayo mga kababayan, no? Kasi wala no hay agua, magdilaan na lang. Magdilaan ba sa Tagalog? Okay. Palit-palit po magdilaan mga kababayan, no? Okay, kasi walang tubig. Anong iligo mo kung walang tubig? So, magdilaan na lang, mas lalo po nangangamoy po mga suki, no? Ayan, kung laway, okay, pampaligo natin mga kababayan. So, yan po ang pinaka-problema. Okay, mga opisyal ng Zamboanga sa District 1. So, itong si Kimer. Okay, maghanap po ng paraan, no? Kimer. Adan Olaso po ng District 1, no? And then sa District 2, itong malapit kay controversial, itong si Speaker Martin Romualdez, Ferdinand Martin Romualdez. Napaka-controversial po itong tao ito kasalukuyan mga kababayan, no? Kasi di umano, sabihin natin, no? Lagyan lang natin ng shape, di umano, allegedly, accordingly, namudmud po ng pera po sa itong People Initiative, no? Napakaraming pera itong tao, itong mga suki, mga kababayan, no? So sinabi ng presidente, hindi na raw tayo mahirap. Sino may sabi hindi mahirap, no? Wala nga dumadating ng tulong, okay, sa mamamayan po. Sa mamamayan, limited lang. Okay, hindi po katulad ng administration po ng nakaraan during pandemic. Okay, hindi ka makutom mga kababayan. Dahil maraming bigas, maraming suporta, maraming sardinas nung panahon po ni Tatay Digong, no? Kaya nga mahal ng tao ito si Tatay Digong, no? Okay, dumadating ang mga pagkain po mga suki ng panahon niya, no? Tulong. Ito wala eh. Talagang nakirmit mga kababayan, no? Wala kang maramdaman. Ilang taon na, mahigit 2 taon, wala akong naramdaman po mga kababayan. Okay? Wala akong naramdaman na tulong po sa kanila mga suki, mga kababayan, no? Although may mga negosyo tayo, pero ganun din. Okay, hirap po ang negosyo ngayon mga suki, no? Okay, so saan sinasabi nila na hindi na raw mahirap ang Pilipino mga kababayan, no? Okay, tulong pa. Okay, papunta sa mga mahirap na kababayan natin, wala po mga kababayan, no? Okay, wala. Saan ang tulong nila? Ayan po. Okay, sa panahon ni Tatay Digong, tambak ang okay, pagkain po, health services, okay, mga infrastructure. Okay, ang nabigo lang kay Tatay Digong, promise niya na magkaroon po ng yung mass, okay, transportation po, yung train magmula po sa, okay, sa paikot po ng Mindanao, no? Magmula sa Jensan, papunta po sa Davao Region, and then papunta sa itong Mimaropa, itong mga Cagayan de Oro, Iligan, and then papunta dito sa Sambo. Yan lang ang wala po mga kababayan, no? Hindi po natupad ng Pangulo yung pangako niya, no? Yun. Pero ang iba, marami naman pakinabang po mga suki, no? Lalo na po sa public service, yung mga kalusugan mga suki, mga kababayan, no? Yun ang hinahanap natin. Okay. Kaya nga, okay, baka bola-bola lang, okay, pagkondisyon ng utak na. So, bantayan natin talaga itong people initiative. Okay, dapat hindi po mababubuyan. Nakakatakot mga suki, mga kababayan, no? Hindi natin alam ang kanilang isip. Okay, sinasabi lang pang for economic chacha, for economic amendment, pero wag po mga kababayan, no? Okay, actually, yumaman man tayo kahit na hindi amen ang konstitusyon, no? Tingnan mo ang resulta ng ekonomiya natin. Okay, itong mga growth natin. Okay, yung mga inflation natin. Okay, kahit na hindi paulitan ng Constitution, yung 1987 Constitution ay wala din. Kung talagang asenso ang Pilipinas, asenso talaga. Depende yan sa pamumuno po mga suki. Okay, mga kababayan, ay pagpalakad ng pag-administration po ng mga national line of agencies natin, mga local government office, units, at saka itong mga regional government katulad ng BARM. Depende po. Okay, sa seryoso, hindi po ang konstitusyon ng problema mga kababayan, na. Ayan, hindi problema. Ang freedom constitution natin na dapat manatili, ay huwag po galawin mga suki, no? Okay, number 1 ako mag-oppose dito po sa paggalaw constitution natin, no? Okay. Ayan. Kasi yung isip ba, biglang pag-twist, okay, pag-twist ng constitution, and then napunta na tayo sa ibang mga kababayan, no? Napunta na tayo sa ibang sistema. Yun ang iniwasan natin, mga suki, mga kababayan. Tama na. Kung talagang umasenso ang Pilipinas, asenso rin yan sa pamagitan po ng magandang pamamalakan po ng gobyerno natin. Sistema, okay, sa pag-implement ng project, no? Okay, ng mga public service, okay, pang ekonomiya, okay, pang infrastructure, development, na depende na yan mga suki sa mga namumuno, no? Okay, wag na tayo managinip pa, mag-dream na ganon, and then ang kalabasan po ay mas lalo pahirap po sa kapwa natin, no? Pilipino. Ngayon nga, mahirap na. Okay, mahirap na. Tapos dagdagan mo pa ng problema, wag na po mga kababayan, no? Wag na. Ayan, so babalik ako, meron akong parinig mga kababayan, no? Tungkol naman sa itong proposal, mga peace talk, peace deal, itong ng Israeli government at saka Hamas mga kababayan, no? Ayan. So, sige, ito lang ito.
Administration bilang balita ay tumatalaay sa naisipang kasalukuyan at nakapanahon. Politika, makatunong, komentaryo at balita ang programa ay patas sa lahat. Walang kinikilingan, walang pinakampilan, at walang pinapamigan ang programa ito. Ang programa ito ay public service sa kahanginan at trabaho lamang.
Ayan.
female voice, male voice, lolly voice, monster voice.
Okay, pakinggan natin po yung foreign minister ng Qatar, no? Alam mo itong Qatar government, Qatari government, okay, sila po ang mag-broker po ng itong Taliban sa Afghanistan, no? Kaya naging maayos, okay, magkaroon po ng peace ang itong Taliban, mga kababayan, no? Taliban government. Sila rin mag-broker ito. Kasama po ang US. Okay, pakinggan natin itong Qatari minister. Tinatanong po ng anong magtanong ito, media. Okay, kung ano ang magandang balita nila tungkol dito po sa ceasefire o sa bansang Israel at saka itong Hamas, Gaza Strip, no? Pakinggan natin para makakuha tayo ng puntos, no? Sila rin nag-broker po ng itong kasalukuyan po, mga kababayan, no? Yung problema po ng mga hostages at saka itong bakbakan po dyan sa Gaza, mga kababayan. Natutukan natin, huwag natin pabayaan, okay, mga problema po ng daigdig, mga suki, no? Okay. Nasa public service tayo. Okay. Para sa lahat. Pakinggan natin, no? Qatari foreign minister. Ayan.
Two-state solution is people living side by side in next to each other. Now, whoever is accepting this principle, I believe should be, we should deal with them in a very positive manner. But the ones who are not accepting such a principle, what is the alternative that we are providing for the people who are willing to accept this principle? That's the key issue.
Your Excellency, I want to ask two questions about what we describe as the day after this terrible war ends and what governance would look like. The first is whether you imagine that Hamas would play a role in the governance of Gaza and of an eventual Palestinian state. Israel would strongly oppose that. What would Qatar's position be?
Well, our position that the fate of the Palestinians should remain at the hands of the Palestinians. They are the ones who should decide what will be the way forward. For us, we see that the way forward, that Gaza cannot be addressed separately or in isolation from the West Bank. And there should be one government that take care of Gaza and the West Bank together. We have the Palestinian Authority, whatever their reforms they are willing to do, but yet this is a decision of the Palestinians, the Palestinian factions. Those are the ones who can decide who should govern them or not. Neither Qatar nor Israel nor anyone, I believe, in the position to impose on them something else or what we believe is right for them.
And I take it from your earlier comments in answer to Andrea that you think Hamas should accept Israel's right to exist as the price of being part of the future. Is that a fair statement?
Well, I think that the statement that I'm saying that everyone, now, I'll just take a step back. Whether it's Hamas, Fatah, or any political ideology or political party, it's this ideology is an idea. For you to challenge this idea is to present a better idea. And the better idea here is the two-state solution. And now, whoever is opposing the two-state solution, if the majority is agreeing to, I think the people themselves will have the answer to that. So that's why I'm saying that we are not in position to decide on behalf of the Palestinian people. They can decide on their own. And we believe that the only way forward that's been embraced and adopted by everybody, including the Palestinian Authority, is to have the Palestinian state living side by side to Israel.
quick final question. Prime Minister Netanyahu, but many others, including many U.S. officials, have said that a future Palestinian state should be effectively demilitarized, able to take care of security, but not able to launch wars against its neighbors. Do you agree with that?
Well, we don't want to see any country able to launch a war against its neighbor, and we want to live, peacefully with each other.
Okay, naputol no? Okay, pinutol ata. Okay. Okay, pakinggan natin uli ano natin uli, no? Bakit pinutol? Okay, isa pa.
Two-state solution is people living side by side next to each other. Now, whoever is accepting this principle, I believe this should be, we should deal with them in a very positive manner. But the ones who are not accepting such a principle, what is the alternative that we are providing for the people who are willing to accept this principle? That's the key issue.
Your Excellency, I want to ask two questions about what we describe as the day after this terrible war.
Ibalik lang natin ang question, yung
The first is whether you imagine that Hamas would play a role in the governance of Gaza and of an eventual Palestinian state. Israel would strongly oppose that. What would Qatar's position be?
Well, our position that the fate of the Palestinians should remain at the hands of the Palestinians. They are the ones who should decide what will be the way forward. For us, we see that the way forward, that Gaza cannot be addressed separately or in isolation from the West Bank. And there should be one government that take care of Gaza and the West Bank together. We have the Palestinian Authority, whatever their reforms they are willing to do, but yet this is a decision of the Palestinians factions. Those are the ones who can decide who should govern them or not. Neither Qatar nor Israel nor anyone, I believe, in a position to impose on them something else or what we believe is right for them.
And I take it from your earlier comments in answer to Andrea that you think Hamas should accept Israel's right to exist as the price of being part of the future. Is that a fair statement?
Well, I think that the statement that I'm saying that everyone, now, I'll just take a step back. Whether it's Hamas, Fatah, or any political ideology or political party, it's this ideology is an idea. For you to challenge this idea is to present a better idea, and the better idea here is the two-state solution. And now, whoever is opposing the two-state solution, if the majority is agreeing to, I think the people themselves will have the answer to that. So that's why I'm saying that we are not in position to decide on behalf of the Palestinian people. They can decide on their own, and we believe that the only way forward that's been embraced and adopted by everybody, including the Palestinian Authority, is to have the Palestinian state living side by side to Israel.
A quick final question. Prime Minister Netanyahu, but many others, including many U.S. officials, have said that a future Palestinian state should be effectively demilitarized, able to take care of security, but not able to launch wars against its neighbors. Do you agree with that?
Well, we don't want to see any country able to launch a war against its neighbor, and we want to live, peacefully with each other.
Okay. So isang beses mo, tatlong beses no. Yun kasi ang advice ng propeta, Prophet Muhammad. Pag meron mga important issue, dapat tatlong beses parinig natin, no? Yun ang advice niya. Ayan. Ni propeta Muhammad, peace be upon him, no? Tatlong beses kung mga Mahalagang issue ganito, no? Ayan.
Two-state solution is people living side by side and next to each other. Now, whoever is accepting this principle, I believe should be, we should deal with them in a very positive manner. But the ones who are not accepting such a principle, what is the alternative that we are providing for the people who are willing to accept this principle? That's the key issue.
Your Excellency, I want to ask two questions about what we describe as the day after this terrible war ends and what governance would look like. The first is whether you imagine that Hamas would play a role in the governance of Gaza and of an eventual Palestinian state. Israel would strongly oppose that. What would Qatar's position be?
Well, our position that the fate of the Palestinians should remain at the hands of the Palestinians. They are the ones who should decide what will be the way forward. For us, we see that the way forward, that Gaza cannot be addressed separately or in isolation from the West Bank. And there should be one government that take care of Gaza and the West Bank together. We have the Palestinian Authority, whatever their reforms they are willing to do, but yet this is a decision of the Palestinian factions. Those are the ones who can decide who should govern them or not. Neither Qatar nor Israel nor anyone, I believe, in a position to impose on them something else or what we believe is right for them.
And I take it from your earlier comments in answer to Andrea that you think Hamas should accept Israel's right to exist as the price of being part of the future. Is that a fair statement?
Well, I think that the statement that I'm saying that everyone now, I'll just take a step back. Whether it's Hamas, Fatah, or any political ideology or political party, it's this ideology is an idea. For you to challenge this idea is to present a better idea, and the better idea here is the two-state solution. And now, whoever is opposing the two-state solution, if the majority is agreeing to, I think the people themselves will have the answer to that. So that's why I'm saying that we are not in position to decide on behalf of the Palestinian people. They can decide on their own, and we believe that the only way forward that's been embraced and adopted by everybody, including the Palestinian Authority, is to have the Palestinian state living side by side to Israel.
A quick final question. Prime Minister Netanyahu, but many others, including many U.S. officials, have said that a future Palestinian state should be effectively demilitarized, able to take care of security, but not able to launch wars against its neighbors. Do you agree with that?
Well, we don't want to see any country able to launch a war against its neighbor, and we want to live, peacefully with other.
Okay, tapos na po mga suki, mga kababayan, no? Ang paliwanag po ng si Al-Ameri ba ito? Foreign Minister po ng Qatari government, no? Okay. So after this, sandali lang, may parinig din ako mga kababayan sa hanap buhay naman, no?
Female voice, male voice, lolly voice, monster voice.
Okay, ang tunghayan natin itong Islamic case for Bitcoin. Hanap buhay naman tayo, no? Ano ba ito? Halal ang Bitcoin or pwede ba sa atin o hindi, mga kababayan? Pakinggan natin, no? The Islamic case for Bitcoin. Mahalaga din ito kasi sa hanap buhay ito, mga kababayan, no? Okay. Pakinggan natin kung ano po ang Bitcoin, no? Ayan. May nagsabi ay halal, wala problema. Kasi marami tayong pumapasok dito po sa negosyo po ito ng Bitcoin, no? Okay. Pakinggan natin.
Principles of Economics, my complete guide to understanding economics, is now available in hardcover, audiobook, and ebook from safeddin.com, Amazon, and many more booksellers worldwide. And now I am also teaching a course based on this book on my website, safeddin.com. Principles of Economics will run the whole academic year from September to June, and will have a new lecture every 2 weeks, as well as weekly live online discussion seminars open to
Time check
learners
natin,
from all over
17
the
minutos
world
po
and from
pasado
all
alas
walks
7,
of
no?
life. Whether you're a student, a professional, or a retiree, you are making economic decisions every day, and this course will arm you with the wisdom of centuries of economists to improve your economic decision making. You also get a free book of Principles of Economics if you sign up for the course, and if you do it before September 20th, you'll get a 20% discount. Go to safeddin.com and sign up now. The Bitcoin Standard Podcast is brought to you by CrowdHealth. CrowdHealth is the Bitcoiner's answer to fiat health insurance. If you listen to the show, you've probably heard me rail against the problems of modern healthcare and health insurance. CrowdHealth is a brilliant new solution to this problem that leverages the power of Bitcoin to help people get affordable healthcare. CrowdHealth holds its cash reserves in Bitcoin. It negotiates with healthcare providers on your behalf and gets you much better rates by offering to pay them cash upfront without having to go through the expensive bureaucracy of modern healthcare insurance. It's a solution that works better for healthcare providers and for patients by disintermediating large insurance companies who have the wrong incentives and are constantly raising costs. I'm very happy to have signed up for CrowdHealth, and I'm really excited to support them as they disrupt the fiat health insurance industry. Go to joincrowdhealth.com and use the discount code SAFE, SAIF, and you'll get the first 6 months for $99 only. Coinbits. Coinbits is a great way to introduce your pre-coiner friends and family to Bitcoin. Get them set up in under a minute and help kickstart their journey by turning everyday spare change into Bitcoin. This Bitcoin-only app takes the uncertainty and fear out of Bitcoin saving by rounding up debit and credit card purchases to the nearest dollar, then using the difference to buy Bitcoin. Set it, forget it, and let the app automatically tax your high-time preference spending by saving the hardest money ever. Want to save in Bitcoin faster? Customers can multiply their roundups up to 10x or adjust their savings frequency for weekly or daily Bitcoin stacking. Coinbits is built on a sound, tried and true dollar cost averaging strategy that turns Bitcoin's volatility in your favor. Once you've gotten a private wallet set up, Coinbits encourages you to withdraw your Bitcoin to your own private wallet and embrace the Bitcoin Standard way of life. Start stacking on CoinbitsApp.com and save your time and energy in the soundest money ever. The Bitcoin Standard Podcast is brought to you by CoinKite. CoinKite are my favorite makers of Bitcoin hardware. They produce the legendary OpenDime, the first Bitcoin bearer asset, as well as the reliable cold card hardware wallet, the excellent stainless steel seed plates for storing your seed phrases, and the block clock. Now, CoinKite have produced the SATS card, a card the size of a credit card which can store Bitcoin and works great as a gift. CoinKite have just produced a limited edition gorgeous Bitcoin Standard SATS card, which carries the Bitcoin Standard logo, and you can get it from coinkite.shop/Bitcoin Standard. Use the code Bitcoin
Mga
Standard
tool
to
ng
get
investment
5%
nito,
off
no?
your
Itong mga
purchase.
binabanggit
Get
niya.
paid in Bitcoin regardless of who you
Inaantay
work for
natin
and
kung
regardless
halal
of
ba.
who's paying you. All thanks to a premium service I personally love and use, and that is Bitwage. Thanks to Bitwage, I receive my books royalties in Bitcoin. It is cheaper, faster, and easier. It is a true set it and forget it system, and Bitwage has been offering this premium service since 2014. Anyone can sign up and use it right away. No restrictions or limits, fully non-custodial. You can even split your incoming payment. Get part in Bitcoin and part to a bank account you specify. It could not be easier, and I cannot recommend Bitwage highly enough. Go to bitwage.com and sign up now and get paid in Bitcoin with your next payment or salary. I want to try and work on orange pilling the Muslim world. They're very resistant and hesitant and hostile to the idea. Every time I talk to an Arab about it, they think I'm trying to sell them a Ponzi scheme. And you can kind of understand because everybody's trying to sell a Ponzi scheme these days. So immediately you're going to think Bitcoin is a Ponzi scheme. But really, if you look into it, I don't know if you've heard the podcast that I've had on this issue on Islamic finance and Bitcoin. Did you hear them?
No, not yet, actually.
I will. I've had about 4 episodes. You can see if you go to my page, safedeen.com/podcast, you'll find tags for different topics. One of those topics is Islamic finance. And then you click on that and you'll see the 4 different episodes. One was with Haris Irfan. One was with Safdar Alam, and one was with Tariq Al-Diwani. And so we've discussed this before, and I think there is an unimpeachable case to be made that not only is Bitcoin halal, but Bitcoin necessarily makes the dollar haram. Bitcoin necessarily means that the dollar becomes haram. I think before Bitcoin, you could sort of understand the fatwa that says that using the dollar is halal, because you can see how not using the dollar and not getting into riba and not getting into debt is almost like financial suicide in a world in which fiat is constantly being devalued. And this is something that I discuss in depth in the fiat standard. So you're constantly devaluing the currency. And so if you're holding savings and if you're not in debt, you are constantly using your purchasing power, which is what happens if
Let me interrupt you here, Dr. Said. That's about the fractional reserve itself, but it's not about the banking system. I mean, fractional reserve is the one which do this riba.
Yes, fractional reserve and also, fiat monetary inflation to finance the government, issuing treasuries, government borrowing.
Okay.
But all going off gold as money. And going on to what fiat money is ultimately is riba. It's usurious loans. By Islamic definition, it is clearly usurious. Now, you can see that it is clearly haram because it involves lending with interest. And but you can see why you could argue that there's no alternative.
Okay, basta lending with interest ay haram na sa mga kababayan, no? Yun lang ang iwasan natin po basta mga mag-lending with interest na, okay, na hindi na po pwede, no? So, meron Bitcoin halal, meron Bitcoin na, okay, haram. Ayon po sa explanation, no? Meron halal, so hanapin natin ang halal. At meron haram. Okay, so, iwasan natin ang haram. Ang kunin lang natin ang halal. Diyan nga makukuha yan sa musapa.com, no? Kung masipag kayo maghanap ng mga hanap buhay po na, okay, hanap buhay po na compliance po sa Sharia, diyan pupunta kayo sa musapa.com, no? Okay, MUSAFFA and then .com. Madali po mga kababayan, na. Okay, so hanapin lang sa mga Google o kaya sa artificial intelligence, makukuha po yung musapa.com, no? Ayan. So katulad mga ito, pakinggan natin po kung anong explanation nila, no? Okay.
If you're a Muslim, if you're a Muslim living in 1995 or 2005, you have to, you're running a business in anywhere in the world and you have suppliers and purchases all over the world. You need to be using a foreign exchange market. You need to be sending money abroad and you need to be financing your business operation. You have no choice but to deal with the dollar. There was a monopoly, effectively, that was centered around the dollar. I mean, there were some alternatives here and there, but predominantly it was the dollar. And if you wanted to enter a large market, you need the dollar. And the alternatives, gold was not an option. You can use gold in day-to-day dealing. You can use gold to save, which a lot of Muslims do. And not just Muslims, but all over the world do that. But it's not useful as a business money because your business operates at a frequency and the speed is much higher than the speed of gold. So moving bits of gold around every time you make a payment for a supermarket or for
any kind of modern business.
Katulad natin, business-minded. Baka utak ko business-minded. Kaya kailangan aware tayo rito mga kababayan para hindi tayo makasagasa po ng riba. Okay. Katulad ko, utak ko, puro business. Okay, ang loob ng utak ko mga kababayan, puro business. Okay, hindi monkey business, talagang business. Ayan, business talaga ang utak natin. Kaya pinag-aralan natin ito na huwag tayo makapasok po sa mga riba. Ayan.
Is highly inconvenient. So you have to rely on a banking system, and the banking system is monopolized to use fiat money and run the Bank of England model of shitcoin, essentially. So I can understand before Bitcoin that you could argue, perhaps from a religious perspective, in the same way that, let's say, you found yourself on an island.
Okay, Bitcoin, no? Bitcoin. Okay, fiat money, F-I-A-T, fiat. Okay, sa term ng sa term ng finance mga kababayan, fiat. Ayan, fiat money. Dumain fiat, dumain red. Yakan kasi ang fiat, red. Color red. So, fiat. F-I-A-T. Ayan.
Where the only thing that exists that you can eat is pork, and the alternative was dying. You can see how you could argue that you wouldn't want to starve, and so you could eat pork. So you could use the dollar, you could eat pork while you're on this island, as long as there are no alternatives to pork, right? So you could use riba, you could use the dollar, I think, as long as there were no alternatives. And you could argue whether yes or no, that is a legitimate argument or not. But still, it's a legitimate argument, and it only works anyway if there are no alternatives. If you discover cows on that island, no more bacon for you. You have to eat the cows now. You can't go and eat the pork. So now we have cows, basically. That's what Bitcoin is. It's a beautiful metaphor. It works out very nicely. Bitcoin is cows. Bitcoin is halal. Bitcoin has no riba. And Bitcoin allows you to do anything the dollar allows you to do. So you want to send money across national borders, you don't need to go through the riba system. You don't need to go through the usury system. You can go through Bitcoin. You want to save, you want to hold savings. You don't need to buy government bonds. You don't need to hold US dollar physical cash. You can just stack sats like a civilized human being and like a halal human being as well, because nowhere in the operation of Bitcoin is there any riba involved. Some people might use Bitcoin.
Okay, halal sa kanila ng Bitcoin, no? Halal. So tandaan natin, ang Bitcoin, explanation po ng expert ay halal po mga kababayan, no? So walang kaduda-duda po, piliin natin ang halal, no? Halal Bitcoin. Okay. Maglaro ako ito mga kababayan, no? Maglaro ako ng Bitcoin. Okay, pero alam mo naman, pobre ako. Okay, maliliit lang ang Bitcoin ko mga kababayan. Pero maglaro ako ito. Yung Bitcoin, mga cryptocurrency ito. Kasi halal man. Ayan, halal. Sa explanation po nila mga kababayan, itong mga cryptocoin, no? Cryptocurrency. Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, maraming klase. Halal daw. Ayan. Sige. Maglaro ako ito.
For riba, but they can also use gold for riba. But that doesn't concern you. With the dollar, on the other hand, it does concern you, because riba is baked in at the protocol level. It's not just that there's these pieces of paper. This is a key point that I discussed in the fiat standard, in that fiat money is not physical pieces of paper. Physical paper is about 5 or 10% or so of fiat money. The real supply of fiat money, the vast majority of the supply of fiat money, around 90%, is digital money. And that digital money is created when debt is created. That's the key thing to understand. So there has to be riba in order for the dollar to come into existence. And then once the dollar comes into existence, that...
Okay, itong laro ng Bitcoin, yung mga cryptocurrency, ay digital money ito mga kababayan, no? Kung gusto matuto, kailangan matuto ka sa digital. Okay. Kailangan maalam mo yung digital application mga kababayan. Ito ang hanap buhay dito mga suki, mga tagapakinig. Itong mga Bitcoin. Digital ito okay? Ang laro ito. Okay, digital, tinatawag na digital money. Okay. So nilalaro natin ito kahit malit lang, bari-bariya lang. Nilalaro natin itong mga laro ito mga kababayan, na. Ayan.
They make your physical dollar. So even if you're just using physical dollars and you're saying, you know what, I'm not using the banks, I'm not taking loans, I'm not lending, I'm not taking interest, I'm just using the physical dollars and I'm storing them in my home and trading with them, you're still dealing with riba, because it took somebody to participate in riba for your dollar to be issued. And so therefore, I think there is an Islamic imperative. If you're a Muslim, there is an imperative to be using Bitcoin. It's not just that it's halal and it's cool to be using it as a Muslim. I think you need to ask yourself, now, you don't have an alternative. You don't have an excuse anymore to continue to use the dollar. You have an alternative. You have no reason to be eating the pork anymore. So why are you?
My question isn't it the same? I understand one BTC is equal one BTC. So isn't it the same now when we go to trading markets and hope that the one Bitcoin became $60,000 or $65,000? We again have in the back of our mindset that the dollar is the reference still there. So wherever we go now, I just abstracted like one balancing everything in the world in one hand and the dollar in the other hand. That's the right situation. Even the Bitcoin. So if you go to the traders, ask them about Bitcoin, he'll tell you that I am there for trading because the Bitcoin is going to reach 100K, 150K. So we are still in the same monetary system, even though that the Bitcoin itself has a decentralized coin, and it's totally perfect. It's totally killing the fractional reserve, killing any riba on their systems. I understand that very well, but we took this beautiful decentralized coin and just throw it in the same fiat system that the world running on stock markets, and we cannot just take this all down to the ground and say we have to start something new to match the Bitcoin. Is that the case? No, this is my question.
I think, I don't agree with you. I don't think of the world in terms of dollars anymore. I think of the world in terms of Bitcoin. And I think, people think this is crazy, but no, it's, I think a lot of people eventually make that mental switch. You start thinking about the world in terms of dollars and the world makes a lot more sense if you are into Bitcoin, because ultimately, you realize once you're really into Bitcoin, once you hold a significant percentage of your wealth in Bitcoin, it becomes clear that the world, all the other alternatives that the world can offer are constantly devaluing. And so as you're measuring against them, you're witnessing everything that you measure with get messed up. Whereas with Bitcoin, exactly, it's heading up. And so, in a sense, it also even makes more sense because once a majority of your portfolio perhaps is in Bitcoin.
Okay, wag kayo alis. Makinig kayo ng mabuti, no?
Everything for you needs to be calculated in terms of, it's better for you to think in terms of Bitcoin at that point, because you think, for instance, if this is your net worth, then you think about how much you're going to be spending on a house or on a car. It is a function of your net worth. So you need to think of those expenditures in terms of Bitcoin, because your net worth is kind of Bitcoin. So if your net worth goes up, the amount of the amount that you're able to get in fiat terms goes up. And so you think of those things, you calculate them in terms of Bitcoin in order to think of them in terms of your net worth. So I think over time, this is just a mental habit thing. And if you look at early Bitcoiners, people who have been in Bitcoin for years, they do make this mental transition, and they do start thinking in terms of Satoshis and in terms of Bitcoins. And yeah, look, it's we're not waiting for anything, and we're not. I don't see the reason for why Bitcoin needs to be added into the system, because Bitcoin functions completely independently of the system, but it allows us to do everything that the system does, and so it makes the system obsolete. And so, you know, whether they want to get this early or they want to get this late, that's their choice. Our guest today is Safdar Alam, who is Chief Executive Officer at UK-based Maidan Capital and the former Global Head of Islamic Structuring at JP Morgan. For many people who are listening here, I presume just the entire idea of Islamic finance seems like an alien concept. Why should a religion have its own financial system? So could you give us a little bit of your idea about what is the core of Islamic finance? How it differs from the mainstream fiat finance?
Okay, I guess one way of approaching it is to say that in Islam, we are told our approach to money and finance, it's not distinguishable to our approach in everything else, which means that it must be driven by values that we are informed that are important. So this relates to ethics. So in the sense that, you know, so there's different classification of rules in Islam. One is our relationship with our creator, for example, how we worship. And we're told how that should be because we shouldn't transgress beyond certain bounds. And also we're told how to deal with people. You know, not all things are legal rules, but we're told, you know, not to lie with people. If you give your word, you should hold on to it. And also we're told less legal issues as well. We're told how to interact with our parents, for example. We're told how to interact with our children. And so there's all different aspects of rules. And the same applies to money and finance. We're told how we should interact with money, how we should interact with people when it comes to money, and how we should handle ourselves when it comes to transactions. And so initially, a lot of these rules are kind of prescriptive. It tells us, you know, you should do this, or you should not do this. And often what's told to us it's quite simple things, you know, especially when it comes to finance, because remember, these rules were revealed to us either in the Quran itself or early on at the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, which was in the 7th century. So the way the rules presented to us are consistent with that time. For example, we're not told about how to invest in financial markets. We're not told about how to deal with institutional activities that might not be socially responsible or consistent with the environment. But we're given basic principles, we're told. And so the main principles, I think one that most people would know if they're familiar with Islamic finance, one is there's a prohibition of lending with interest. We are allowed to lend money and incur debt, but nobody's allowed to benefit from it. So you must repay only the principal. And so lending at interest is forbidden in the strongest terms. But there are many other aspects of business that we're told to avoid or to do so. And they're quite simple things, to be honest. We're told not to lie and not to deceive each other, to be honest in their dealings. And interestingly, we are told about certain transactions. And when these examples are given, these often what's involved, the commodities involved are often gold and silver, because this was money at the time. But also examples are given referring to dates and wheat. And we're told some certain kinds of transactions are not permissible and some are. So we're also told, for example, speculation is not permissible. You shouldn't speculate with your money. We're told gambling is not permitted.
Okay, speculation, yung mga mag-speculate sa mga anak buhay, hindi po pwede, no? Okay, so hindi po pwede sa atin. Okay, kasi marami pong mga speculation, yung mga mag-analyze, okay, and then ibigay sa atin mga kababayan, no? Okay, inject sa atin, hindi po pwede tayo mga kababayan, no? Okay, sabi po ng explanation ng expert ito. Ayan.
And so from these very, very simple rules, I would say, it gives us the framework to develop more complex principles. And I think that's broadly where we're coming from, is that Islam sets down for us a certain set of principles, which should be our starting point. And from there, we can derive economic systems.
Why is it wrong to charge an interest on a loan? So if you want to lend money to somebody, they want to pay you 5%. Then they want to do it, you want to do it. Why should it be forbidden?
Okay, kaya nga mabagal ang ascension natin, no, dito sa bilang minority doon po sa dahil po sa yung mga conventional bank ay puro interest mga suki, mga kababayan, no. So hindi tayo makabail dahil po mag-interest ang mga bangko, mga suki, no. Kaya nga okay, nagpasalamat ako sa pamahalaan ng BARM, no. Inaasikaso nila po ang Sharia compliance po sa mga financing institution po para sa BARM, mga kababayan, no? Sana magtagumpay yan. Okay, within 2024 daw ito matapos daw. Okay, sabi po ng kausap ko, okay, member po ng SSB, no? Yung council po, parang monetary board ba? Okay, monetary board dito sa BARM, mga kababayan, no? Okay, so within itong taon nito 2024 matapos daw yan, no? Ang tawi-tawi ngayon ay dahil wala pang bangko na compliance sa Sharia law, ay lalagyan daw nila ng bangko yung tawi-tawi province, no? Okay. So yan. So mahalaga ito para sa atin, no? Okay, gusto natin mangutang para puhunan natin sa mga negosyo, hindi tayo makautang dahil po sa interest. Meron po interest. Ayan. Wala. Okay, lag behind tayo dahil wala tayong mga mautangan. Okay, para pagpundar ng dagdag ng negosyo natin. Yung sa mga corporation na tawag na CAPEX, capital expenditure. So, hindi tayo makagalaw. Okay. Hindi tayo madali mag-asenso, mga kababayan, no? Dahil wala tayong mautangan. Okay, pag mangutang ka, puro may interest na, yan di pwede. Kasi riba yun, mga kababayan. Okay, so kahit hindi ko matapos ito, kasi may mga asikasuhin rin ako. Okay, sige lang, patuloy lang natin. Mga ilang minuto na lang, no? Okay, overtime na. Okay.
Could you make a case for that?
Okay, so I think if we look at two isolated parties looking to make a transaction, and one wants a loan, the other one has the capital willing to give a loan, and if you look at the fact that they mutually agree, then it can be argued that transaction on its own, you can argue that might not be delivering harm to anybody, especially if the repayment is within the capacity of the borrower and he repays. Then the transaction's finished. And I agree on that isolated incident, it's difficult to evidence any harm that might occur. So, but we have to remember that when humans are in situations that we don't often stick to the rules. So for example, so the point I'm making is that we have to look at the potential harm that can occur, and we also have to consider human nature. So for example,
Okay, stick to the rule, no? Stick to the rule. Stick to the rule. Ibig sabihin, okay, kung Sharia, stick to Sharia. Okay. Stick to Sharia tayo. Stick to the rule. Ayan po. Yun po ang ibig sabihin, no? Kung anong rule po ng pwede at saka hindi pwede, manggaling po sa Sharia, yun. Yan ang sundin natin. Wala tayong problema doon. Ayan. Sige.
The reasons that alcohol is made forbidden is that even though very small amounts of it might not intoxicate, but larger amounts can. And so there's a principle that we derive from there that if there's an activity which extended use of that activity can result in harm, that's quite possible, even though single isolated activities might not result in harm. So I think this comes back to the understanding of human nature as well, that if we are committed down a slippery slope of making a single transaction where we can charge interest, that the risk lies that this can then become systemic and become systematic.
Okay, kung ang problema natin na dahil hindi tayo makautang sa mga may interest, kung talagang bigyan tayo ng rijikin ng Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no? Ang God, okay, magpo-provide sa atin, and then maniwala tayo sa Kanya, okay, 100% hindi tayo maghihirap mga kababayan, no? Basta sumunod tayo, okay, sa sinasabi po ng itong mga rules, sinatawag na stick to the rule. Okay, ibig sabihin, stick to Sharia mga kababayan, no? Wala kang problema. Kung problema mo na kahit hindi ka makautang sa mga bangko dahil may interest, may riba, wala kang problema pa mga tagapakinig natin, no? Basta maniwala ka lang, okay, sa Panginoon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wala kang problema. Kung talagang makakain ka mga suki, no? Kung talagang makapera ka. Importante ay tayo sumunod mga tagapakinig natin. Ayan. Sige. Hindi na, wala na. Overtime na ito.
And I think that's kind of where we are today. And I think it's much easier today to evidence the harm that's created by a system that's built on lending and interest.
Yeah. I tend to think, when I try and think about the rationale for this being a bad thing, I think of it in terms of, as we see it in the current fiat system, when a lender has the ability to lend out at interest, they effectively have the ability of increasing the money supply without actually making new gold coins or printing new paper money. So when banks lend in the fiat monetary system, that creates new money supply because they issue loans that are not necessarily, or that are mostly not backed by any kind of collateral on hand. So they're overextended financially, and I think the way that I like to think about it is that
okay, ito mga problema natin, no, sa sistema. Okay, katulad ng mga opisyal natin, no. Okay, excuse me na hindi gumagawa, pero yung mga gumagawa po mga kababayan, puro hocus-pocus na lang, puro graft and corruption na lang ginagawa sa mga pagpadaan ng pondo. Ito po pinaka-problema natin, no. Kasama rito po sa topic natin ito mga suki, no, graft and corruption. Okay, mga opisyal natin gagawa ng pera and then pinadaan po sa graft and corruption mga kababayan, no. Okay, and then yung mga riot natin, kain na lang ng kain po ng mga kababayan ng galing sa graft and corruption, no. Okay, wala nang pagpili. Okay, wala nang pag-iwas. Puro kain na lang ng galing sa graft and corruption mga suki, mga kababayan, no. Sakit ulo ko talaga mga kababayan, no. Ayan. Masarap kumain ng mga pagkain and then galing po sa hindi magandang hindi maganda ang pinanggagalingan, no. Galing sa graft and corruption. Ayan. So talagang problema. Problema ang society natin, no. Okay, hindi tayo damay po sa mga system sa mga non-Muslim, wala tayong problema doon. Pero system natin po, sa mga minority mga kababayan, no? Yun ang pinokus lang natin. System natin dito sa, minority province, minority LGUs, minority province, lalo na po sa farm government, no? Okay. So kung kakain na lang tayo ng kakain po ng graph, galing sa graph mga suki, ano nang situation natin, no? Ayan. Sige.
In this kind of situation, when a person is able to lend at a fixed interest rate, their fallback position is that they're going to take away the property of the borrower in case the borrower is unable to pay back. Now, yes, you can say that this is, if the borrower and the lender agree, then why should anybody intervene? And I understand that, but I think from the religious perspective, which is more of a social, which looks more at the social implications of something like this, I think the case against it is that even though the two of them are able to agree, if the reason they agree is that we as a society normalize the idea of the borrower taking the lender taking the borrower's stuff, which effectively monetizes their collateral, so that the house is basically the collateral, but since the house is with the borrower, it's not with the lender. It's being used as a consumer good. The person is living on it, and at the same time, it's being used as a monetary good that the bank will liquidate it if the loan cannot be paid. So I mean, this is kind of
Okay, ganon kasi yun, no? Meron kang property, meron kang residence, meron kang commercial resident o kaya commercial property, and then ilon mo sa bangko, mga kababayan, no? Yun po ang ibig sabihin niya yun. I-loan mo sa bangko kasama ng interest doon sa amortization, yun po ang hindi pwede, no? Okay, hindi po pwede yun sa atin as Muslim. Mag-loan ka sa bangko and then kasama po ang interest rate doon sa amortization, yun po ang okay, na hindi po pwede sa atin, no? Pero sa mga Islamic institutions, sa Islamic banking, sa Islamic finance, wala yun, wala interest. Manguha ka ng pera, okay, may certain condition na hindi po labag sa Sharia law. Yan po ang sa atin. Okay, sa mga Islamic institution natin, okay, sa finance institution natin, sa banking institution natin, sa economic institution natin, okay, wala po, free of interest, no? Ayan po ang ibig sabihin po ng explanation niya yon. Okay. Okay, dagdagan ko lang and then kahit kalahati lang, no? Napakahaba naman kasi ito. Ayan, sige.
Obviously covered by my Austrian inflationist perspective, but it disagrees with the way that the Austrians think about it. But if I were to make the case for why this is wrong, I think it's inflationary. I think that is creating new money that makes us as a society live in a situation where new money is being created by these financial institutions that can then impound the property of people who aren't able to pay. And so the case against it is that people shouldn't, I guess the religious case against it is that as an individual, you don't want to be living in a society that accepts those things. Our guest today is Tariq Aldiwa.
Okay, mag-disclaimer lang ako, no? Itong mga discussion natin, hindi kasali po yung mga Western concept of financing, no? Okay, hindi kasali. Dito po topic natin, no? Sa kanila, okay, yon po ang concept nila ng financing. Wala tayong labot doon, sabi ng Bisaya, no? Yung mga Western concept of financing, wala tayong labot. Basta atin, okay, bilang maniwala sa agama Islam, yun po ang dapat ang system dapat yun po ang sundin natin, no? Okay, sa mga Western concept, mga US, Europe, wala tayong labot doon. So, sila yon. Okay, sila po. Basta tayo, okay, maniwala sa agama, yun ang dapat sundin natin, no? Okay, maniwala sa system natin na free of interest ang Muslim po, mga kababayan, no? Kaya, hindi tayo kasali doon sa kanila. Okay, sa atin, iba po, mga kababayan, na. So, yun, kaya nga, pinaparinig natin itong mga lecture ito, pag at least ma-aware tayo, no? Ayan.
Tariq is the director at Creator Zest Limited, and his book, The Problem with Interest, on the Nature of Usury and Modern Banking, was first published in 1997 and has attracted wide readership among scholars of Islamic finance, as well as scholars of Bitcoin, I should say. So we are also joined by Alan Farrington here, who's recently published a book titled Bitcoin is Venice. And it draws heavily on the work of Tariq. And I think it's very interesting that a lot of Bitcoiners find the economic work of Tariq and Islamic finance in general to be relevant to the topic of Bitcoin. And I certainly think so.
I'd just be really interested in your thoughts on similarities between Austrian and Islamic economics. And I mean, I have my own, but I suspect yours will be.
You give me yours, because then I need a crib sheet usually to make detail.
Okay, but
Well, tell me what.
I tell you what, I'll set it up rather than like actually give my uninformed take. So I think that they both arrive at very similar conclusions about the role of uncertainty and therefore individual decision making in markets. But as far as I can tell, they arrive by completely different lines of reasoning. And so if you have a take on that, that would be fascinating. Probably Safe as well, actually. I'm sure he's thought about it too.
I'm going to defer to Safe. I need to hear what he says before I open my mouth on this, I think.
So I think the way that I see it is that and to follow up on what you said earlier, so the way that the Austrians approach this topic, when you think about it in terms of time preference, and the Austrian ability to analyze time preference is the key toward bridging the two ideas, like the way that Islamic economics meets with Austrian economics. From the Islamic compliant economics, it's a prescriptive and normative statement that we want to have a low time preference, and we make sure that everybody has a time preference by following the religion that says, you follow the religion because the religion says you can't lend at an interest. So therefore, you're essentially forced to not discount the future heavily because you can't gain interest on money. You're forced to not discount the future. It kind of forces you to lower your time preference in a way. On the other hand, from the Austrian perspective, I think what happens, Hoppe says the lowering of time preference initiates the process of civilization. And in turn, the process of civilization leads to a feedback, which also lowers time preference further and further. And I think you arrive at a similar point. Now, here's where I depart from Mises and Rothbard, and this is where I think people start taking the pitchforks out. My usual Austrians, I'm going to get stoned as a heretic by the Austrians for this, I think, not by the Muslims. Is that from the Austrian perspective, they think that time preference determines interest rate, but they don't take that to the conclusion, I think, which is what happens if time preference continues to drop. Well, what happens then is that you basically end up with a system which is similar to the one that you describe in your book, Tariq, which is, but it isn't imposed through religious doctrine. It's emergent on the market because the time preference has dropped. And now you're expected to lose 1% of your money every year on storing that money, and so therefore you're happy to take, you're happy to save that 1% by giving that money to somebody else who has the legal responsibility to hand it back to you in a year. So you save 1%, and so people will lend, but only to people that they trust. And so lending without interest will be, something that happens with friends and family mostly. But then if you want to lend for business, you don't lend, you just take equity. That's the natural thing. Like, why would you, in that situation where the natural market clearing interest rate drops to zero, why would I want to invest in your business? Or even if it's very close to zero, which is the current situation, why would I want to take, not invest in your business, why would I want to lend to your business when you're going to pay me back 0.5%? Yeah, but I'm, taking the credit risk, which means that I could lose 100%. So, nobody would be willing to take that situation. I think it's just, it's currently artificially imposed through the fact that we have an inflationary monetary system that makes it profitable to get into debt, even at an interest, because the money itself is being devalued. This is
that's right. Yes, that's what makes it work very largely. I mean, for the banks, it's exactly great value out of nothing. So they take the interest yield on it. Yeah.
Yeah. So
historically, fractional reserve banking would always be failing. And then the way that they managed to make it work in the 20th century was to destroy the currency, basically. You're constantly bleeding the value of the currency in order to keep this Ponzi going. And it's essentially an intergenerational Ponzi. Future generations are paying for the conspicuous consumption of current generations. This is where it has led.
Yeah.
And that is why I find Bitcoin and the marriage of those two topics so fascinating, because the Bitcoin operates in a way, I don't know how familiar you are with the culture around Bitcoin, but one of the most important things to understand about Bitcoin is that it bends to nobody. It just continues. It's just every 10 minutes there's a new block, and it's been doing this for 13 years and leaving behind a constant trail of heartbroken people crying because it won't change and do what they think is best for it to change. And so we're in this kind of natural experiment now where we're witnessing this growing, very, very quickly growing hard money economy that can't really be stopped, and it's just growing. And it's giving us an example, as it's giving people the ability to save into the future, which I think is enormously important. And I think it's going to lower time preference all over the world. So it's going to give people the ability to save, which is going to make them start discounting the future less. And I think you see this among Bitcoiners. It's insanely common. I mean, I meet a lot of Bitcoiners because my book is popular with Bitcoiners. And it's incredibly common how many people will tell me this, that, I say, I used to spend all my money drinking and partying. And then I figured out that I could save Bitcoin, and I looked at Bitcoin, understood Bitcoin. And now I don't drink, I don't party, and I put that money into Bitcoin, and I just hold Bitcoin. And then you see the shift, like you go from partying, time preference just can only see as far as next weekend and who we're going to party with, to starting a family and thinking, Bitcoiners have grand visions of dynasties and intergenerational things, which really fiat people don't have, because fiat people are on a treadmill that means they can't see past next weekend. Everything is discounted. There's no easy way for providing for the future. So what happens now is we keep lowering time preference because we have Bitcoin, and we're going to see an empirical test of whether what I'm saying is correct or not. We're going to see time preference continue to drop, and then I'm curious to see what happens with interest. And I think, without
Bitcoin would have to become the dominant system for your empirical test to work, surely.
That's what we're doing. I don't know if you've noticed.
Yeah. And how long are you expecting to do this test in the near future?
We're on it. Yeah.
What percentage does Bitcoin take of total turnover, transaction volume in the world on a daily basis?
I think what matters is not so much the transaction volume. What matters is the percentage of cash balances. That's really the key thing. How much of the world's cash balances in Bitcoin? That's the metric. And currently it's around, I'd say, about 0.5% of global cash balances. So still got a lot of room for growth, but this is what Bitcoin does. It grows. So the really fascinating thing here is that there are a lot of crazy controversial ideas in Bitcoin, but I think that Bitcoin is going to effectively bring about an Islamic kind of monetary system, not through any kind of Islamic regulation, just simply through market incentives, because I think it fits very nicely with the Islamic way that you think of finance, where the money is hard, nobody can print the money. So therefore, nobody can guarantee that, if you're giving away a loan and you're getting 5% back, there's nobody out there who can print Bitcoin to bail out the bank that is going to inevitably fall short. So people who are going to try these kind of shenanigans are going to end up basically losing their Bitcoins. And we're going to head toward a system in which people either lend at basic interest rate of 0 or invest in equity. I think it's still too early to see this now, but this is how I think of it theoretically in the future.
Well, coming back to the question on uncertainty, then I think that is a critical issue. How does the world of Islam look at uncertainty in a financial context? And when you make the equity transaction, let's take that as the basis for this little discussion. An interest-based lender would say, well, look, this is a very uncertain business. As a startup, I will lend at 20%, 30%, because there's a lot of risk here. they make that judgment in advance, quite subjectively very often. But the issue is it a correct apportionment of the risk? Right? If you compare it to the equity position, we make a judgment in advance, should we buy equity in this startup venture? But the actual apportionment is not based on an estimation, it's based on an actual fact, on a set of accounts with a profit number agreed according to a certain number of accounting standards, which people generally abide by, and which investors and entrepreneurs both know. And that profit figure is distributed according to a known percentage share in the equity. So the risk resolves itself into a just distribution. But yes, you make your ascertainment of whether you should invest at the beginning in using your own metrics, just as an interest-based lender would. The key is that the interest rate may not match the outcome. Yeah, in which case either the lender is shortchanged because the business was very successful and made a very large profit, or the lender is shortchanged because the businessman went bankrupt and lost all the money, and he didn't pay attention to his business as well as he would have done if it had been entirely equity based. There was this kind of moral hazard for a limited liability.
Okay, gusto ko man nang ipagpatuloy ito. Gusto ko ang topic nila. Pero ang tawag ng panahon, okay, wala na tayong oras, sobra-sobra na. Kaya nga hindi natin matapos ito, sayang. Okay, sige na. Okay, next time na po mga kababayan, no? Okay, kahit kakain na ko mga 2 oras. Okay, kung ipagpatuloy ko ito mga kababayan, no? Okay, sige. Okay, ang time check natin ay 7 minutos na, pasado po alas 8. Sobrang na po mga kababayan, no? Okay, sige na. Okay, paalam tayo dito sa programa natin. Sorry po, hindi ko matapos yung lecture ng Rafaidin, no? Rafaidin. Okay, Sosa. Ang pangalan niya si Rafaidin Sosa. Arosa ba? Amosa. Rafaidin Amosa, mga kababayan, no? Expert po sa Islamic finance, mga kababayan. Mga suki natin, no? So hanggang dito muna ang programa ko. Tama na po ang public service. Okay, kaya sinabi ko may tawag ng panahon, no? Ayan. So, okay, paalam tayo rito sa Consolidated News natin sa umagang ito, araw ng Lunes, araw ng Pabuenas. Okay, mga suki-suki natin sa News Online. Okay, sa programa po Halo-Halo, Special, Opinion, Balita at iba pa. Kasama po Serbisyo Publiko, Tinig ng Mamamayan. And then, Sumbungan po ng Mamamayan. Okay. Ayan, paalam tayo. Okay, babalik tayo mamayang hapon. Okay, sa ating programa. Ayan. So, wala tayong masamang tinapay dito sa programa natin. Halo-Halo, Special Opinion, Balita at iba pa, no? Kasama Serbisyo Publiko, Tinig ng Mamamayan, and then Sumbungan ng Mamamayan. Okay, parati walang masamang tinapay. Okay, sa inyo lahat. Okay, paalam tayo. So, umagang ito, babalik tayo mamayang hapon. Okay, this has been Abs naman lamang po, no? Bye-bye na. Ayan.
administration pinagdalitaan at nais sa naisukan kasalukuyan at nakapanahon. Politika, komentaryo at dalika ang programa kay Patas sa lahat. Walang pinikilingan, walang pinakamitihan, at walang pinapamitan ang programa ito. Ang programa ito ay public service sa makakamilan at trabaho lamang.
Okay, wala tayong katulad sinabi ko, wala tayong problema po sa sa mga practice po ng non-Muslim. Okay, yung protektahan lang natin ng atin mga kababayan. Wala tayong problema sa kanila. Sa mga system nila, wala tayong problema. Basta atin ay dapat protektado mga suki, mga kababayan. No? Ayan. Okay, babay na, no?
Female voice, male voice, lolly voice, monster voice.